Okay. Hi everyone. It is Kamar, aka Brave Design on Instagram and on YouTube, and today I'm going to be talking about when I had a mental health breakdown and I quit a really good paying job because I just could not cope. I just thought about doing this video because I feel like as a modern society, even though we're aware of mental health issues and the fact that they are real brain issues, um, a lot of times we ignore it, um, and we have all these little weird things that we tell ourselves, oh, just go play a sport or, dive into work or something. And all these are just mere distractions. So I'm going to go through all the details and how to, well, at least for me, how I was able to recover from all of this. So stay tuned. Okay, so I'm back. I've been trying to get the right lighting because this is kind of a little bit of a, I don't know, underexposed area. But I do have a tan. I just came back from Florida. We were out on the bay, in the bay. I don't know. So I got quite a bit of tan. Like this is a pretty deep, strong tan. I needed the little bit of mental health, free time before I start my new job, which is start on the 19th, which is 2 weeks away from now. Um, but so basically, this is what happened. So I have an issue with adjustment. So I have adjustment disorder where whether it be a new job, new place of living, whatever it is, I have issues adjusting. It can be challenging within itself because, you know, you can have a month long depression for winning $1 million, and it doesn't make sense. The problem is my brain takes a while to adjust, and then once it's adjusted, then everything's fine. So I do tend to have imposter syndrome. No matter how easy the job is, it just happens. Anyway, in so last year, 2020, like most people or a lot of people, I was struggling with a lot of mental health problems because of COVID and not being able to participate in my self care activities such as traveling, going to the beach, being outdoors, seeing people, and everything. And then I started having a lot of like short-term dating things that kind of triggered some stuff. And then I got a different job which is extremely stressful. They have like one of the highest turnover rates. And then I had a part-time job that was within the same field, so I was working 7 days a week. I was trying to make a horrible relationship work, which fell apart. Then I met someone that just triggered everything. And I remember sometime I'll be at work, working remote, and I just shut down and I had to call off. And then I would smoke like 8 cigarettes in a row and drink coffee. I was losing weight. I had no appetite. Everything on earth just seemed like a failure. Talking to my family it didn't bring me any joy. Talking to my friend was just a little bit of relief. But then once I got off the phone, I was back to square one. Everything was a mess. Going to the gym was horrible. I tried to work out in my basement. I have no energy, and I love working out. Um, it got to the point where I'm generally a 32 waist. I was down to like a 30. I just could not eat. I tried junk food, didn't work. The only thing I wanted was cigarettes and coffee. I ended up getting a job because I wanted to get out of the full time one because it was very stressful. So I got a job that like paid double what I was making there. So I could quit my part time if I wanted to, but I didn't want to because I didn't want the extra time for my brain to overthink. So I started the new job, but right before I started, I had like 4 days off. So I went to Puerto Rico on a snap trip just real quick. And I loved it. And then I came back and had to face the new job. Well, there was a trigger activity that happened the day before I started the new job. So then I started the new job in my bedroom on the computer, and I just could not focus on anything. And so I kept trying, I kept trying. So by the second week, I resigned. And my boss was like, is there a reason you resigned? And I was like, I just can't focus on anything. I'm just having a mental health break because see, I was bringing everything and trying to use things to solve the mental health problem, which was getting a new job and all that. And all was happening, I was distracting myself from the real problem. And so when I started the new job, I could not cope. I remember I couldn't even read a sentence. I just wouldn't understand anything. And so I had to keep rereading and rereading. It wasn't making any sense. I was breaking red lights. I couldn't change my gears right. I was just doing. I lost my ability to do basic motor skills, and so she says suggested I took 2 weeks off to reconsider, and I went back to Puerto Rico. And I remember even in TSA, the lady asked me to scan my ID, and I was looking for the thing to put my ID in, and the big thing was right there: scan ID or ID scanner. That's how bad my motor functions and my cognitive functions were. I went to Puerto Rico again, and I had a great time. But when I came back, starting the job again just didn't work out. And after a week, I resigned. And I remember after I resigned, I felt a bit better. And I still kept a part-time one to keep my, to pay my bills, which my part-time job pays all my bills except my student loan. But of course, we're on a student loan break, so that worked fine. And so I was able to not work for like 2.5, 3 months before I finally went ahead and reapplied for something else. And thank God I made reference to the video earlier when being racially profiled, I do my interview. I start soon, and it pays just as much as the one that I quit paid. So I'm happy about that. But the reason I want to do this video is because I find that a lot of times when I bring up depression, anxiety, and the other comorbidities that may or may not come with it, a lot of times people will say stuff like it's mind over matter, you have so much going for you, blah blah blah, and not realizing that nobody gets up one day and forget about all the things to be grateful for and then have chronic depression. I understand that sometimes if you're not grateful, you're not thinking thinking of being grateful for what you have can affect your mood sometimes, because then you kind of forget what you have and you see what you don't have. But for someone with chronic depression, that's not how it works. In fact, this is how I explain to people how my chronic depression works. Even though my depression is situational, one little thing can trigger the whole thing, and it doesn't matter how much I remind myself to be grateful of stuff, my mood is just off for a while. And a lot of times, if this issue isn't resolved within a certain time frame, the depression just stretches and it snowballs out of control. Medication works sometimes. In fact, I find medication to be best if I know I'm going to go into a stressful situation or a situation where I may have problems adjusting. I take it like 4 weeks prior to the situation, and that way I can make a better transition. But I realize that a lot of times people who don't have depression will say to you, it's mind over matter, dive into work, dive into a hobby, and I cannot stress this any more than I already did. That's not how it works. These are just mere distractions. It's almost like when I started going to school and I would accelerate my courses so I'd be busy all the time. It worked all good and dandy. It helped. But the moment I graduated, I knew right after graduation I was going to be hit with severe depression. Part of it is because of the change. I no longer have the structure. I no longer have the need or the purpose to do assignments. It's not there anymore. And so now I've lost my structure, and now I have to face the world that I was distracting myself from. Don't distract yourself. It's good to have multiple things to focus on and give yourself structure, but don't distract yourself. Some people distract themselves with relationships. Some people distract themselves with hobbies. I used to do things like that. But now one thing I've learned, just like I brought up that I started painting again, painting is not a distraction for me. In fact, I've learned to enjoy the process of painting. And once I'm done, I don't have this urge to continue paint something else so I don't have to deal with life. I give myself a break. I'm like, okay, well, something's got to inspire me now because, and I find something else to do. Another thing, too, is to try to establish meaningful relationships. I can't stress this enough. Meaningful relationships help you through this hard life. It does. In a lot of ways you can tell whether your relationships are meaningful or not. When something good or bad happens in your life, who do you feel you need to inform right away? And if you can't really think of anything, then I'm sorry, but you do not have any meaningful relationships. If you think of people that you can, it runs to your mind to tell them, but, they won't really respond, you need to work on meaningful relationships. And I'm not telling people to go put out Meet Me or friend finders or whatever. But sometimes the people around you have the potential to be meaningful, but a lot of times, and I've seen this with a lot of people, they have a certain set of people that they want to have meaningful relationships with, not because the person is good or whatever. It's just because they're either attracted to them or they think there's some kind of power being in this friendship. It's going to afford them certain opportunities. And unfortunately, a lot of times these people are not going to provide you with the meaningful relationships. And the average Joe that is a very good person, reliable, we don't want meaningful relationships from them because we're not attracted to them. But one of the reasons I said I did this is because I find that we are taught to distract ourselves. I hear people used to say to me, "Oh, just stop worrying about, you know, X, Y, and Z. Just focus on work." I'm like, it's fucking work. I get paid for it for a reason because it's not pleasant. Why would I want to focus on something that isn't pleasant? It isn't bringing me joy. It's not exciting. Why am I focusing on that? It would be better to say focus on your art, which as well, while I do enjoy it, it is work. I get paid to do it. I'm not trying to focus on that. What I want to focus on is meaningful relationships, things that will or potential can potentially extend into a lifetime thing. Of course, we know that may not happen. Friends come, friends may go. But at the same time, it helps us go through this thing called life, which is not the most fun at times. But please do not ignore your mental health. Do not ignore, because it can get really bad. I've known people that had mental health breakdowns that never recovered. They're forever on medication. They're always going in and out of ERs. And these were brilliant people. And because they just ignored it, either because they didn't have the time, they thought maybe if they dove into school or work, it would work for their mental health, until it gets to the point where now they're on disability. You don't want that to happen. And, it's good if you have insurance and you can see a therapist. And I'm not saying all therapists are the greatest. Therapists are human beings that studied situations that actually happened. Your situation may be so unique that they don't really know what to tell you, but that's a place to start. Seek out therapy, stretch out your needs. Don't overwhelm one person with all your mental health problems. And I know a lot of times we have a favorite person, especially for those who have severe mood disorders, or what's it called? Multiple? It's not multiple personality. Borderline. You may have a favorite person and you want to overwhelm them with things because they're the only person you can think of. Try to stretch it out. Stretch it out. And if you find that people are being overwhelmed, try to seek out a therapist or a counselor. Go online and see if you can find one. The information, the resources are out there. But do not ignore and talk about diving into work. It's not realistic. You can't, it may provide you with a distraction, but our brain has a way of just slowly recording things until it becomes overwhelmed and there's complete confusion. You lose your cognitive abilities. You can't do your job anymore. You can't go to school anymore. Is that what you want? For the purpose of seeming normal or without mental health problems. Living in an industrialized society, I feel causes, or well, that's not accurate. I feel like it brings a lot more mental health problems to the surface. I'm not sure if our hunter-gatherer populations had these issues, but depression is a real thing. There are animals that, if left alone for too long, you know, they can develop depression, and some of them can actually die from it. So it's not just a human condition. It's just that we don't study animals long enough to know how many of them or species have this issue. But it's a marked thing, and it has historical strength. So don't be talking about it's mind over matter and there's no such thing. And if you breathe and mindfulness, those things can help you, but essentially you need to address it. Okay, don't create this distraction thing. I know our world try to teach us to hide emotions because but we have to address it. We have to address it, otherwise it becomes a time bomb, and then we become disabled, or and then we can't. Now we're way below square one because now we're not even a functional human being anymore. For me, I don't know that much about cognitive behavioral therapy. I did study a lot of it in my psych degree, but I have my own that I deal with. Number one, I I have this perspective where I look at the world as just this thing, and we're all temporary on it. So while I know my value, I reduce my delusional importance in the grand scheme of things. So I'm like, okay, Nothing is punishing me in this universe. I'm not being punished. I'm not cursed. It just so happened that I feel this way. Two, I remind myself that I'm temporary and my problem is temporary. I will die one day. I will refuse to be anything. So why sit and worry about this? I also remind myself that there's a vast world out there that I haven't seen yet. And so therefore this is only temporary. And if I see more of the world, then, you know, everything will be fine. I remind myself that this is not the last issue I have. I'll always have issues, but the onus is on me to deal with them, navigate them while I go through this world. Um, I also do different things, not just paint or go to the gym, even though it seems like that's all I do. But I love to travel. I like to do stuff like this where I come to a little river and I hang out, may take a selfie or two. Um, but yeah, just do random things, try things and not just distract yourself, but find things that you genuinely enjoy. And don't just stick on one thing either. That's another thing. That's classic escapism. Find multiple things that bring you joy and just live. And if it gets too overwhelming, see your primary care physician, see a therapist, go on some meds, try out some meds. Because you know what? The world may not be the most pleasant thing, but from someone who has thought about suicide a lot when I was younger, I'm really happy I'm here. I'm really happy I never went through it, and I'm really happy I'm here, and I'm happy that I was able to live past 30. Ooh, look at that light. And I'm happy that I figured out some stuff and I can share these experiences with people without any shame. So I will just show you guys a little bit of what's around me. I just discovered this park recently. Uh, you know, it's pretty cool. With the graffiti on the wall and everything. I can't find my spot anymore. But yeah, so I'm gonna hang out here a little bit. Yeah, and I will make sure to leave a link at the bottom for some resources, and you can send me a personal email. I'll always leave my email at the end of the video. Until next time.